When 3I Atlas first appeared on telescope horizons, most scientists viewed it as just another interstellar object. Rare, but natural. Yet over time the same uncomfortable question emerged, the one everyone tried to avoid. What if this object is not just a fragment of ice and rock? What if it was created, or at least altered, by someone? The trigger for such thoughts came from real data. The comet moved along a hyperbolic trajectory, meaning it arrived from interstellar space. That is a fact. But some researchers noted that its velocity and entry angle looked too clean. The interpretation is simple. The trajectory appears as if the object had been sent out from a specific point rather than randomly ejected from an alien stellar system. Online speculation claims this resembles a route adjusted either by someone or by something. Suspicion grew further when 3I Atlas reacted to the Sun normally. Comets behave predictably. Heating triggers releases of gas and dust. But this comet showed uneven activity, as if the reactions were initiated by internal triggers. Several astrophysicists cautiously noted that this could indicate a complex, multi-layer structure. The scientific interpretation: heterogeneous ice composition. The conspiratorial version: some sections of the nucleus may be technically formed. Another point of interest is information that early images of the comet from large observatories showed strange reflections at unexpected angles. At first, these were labeled optical artifacts. But some believe the reported light flashes may have resulted from reflections off surfaces that were not chaotic or porous, like those of ordinary comets, but instead smooth. Several observatory staff members anonymously confirmed that they saw the raw data, and the flashes looked even sharper there. Additional intrigue came from an episode involving satellite images. In several high-resolution frames, a dark zone appeared near the area where the comet should have been. Within a few hours, those images were replaced by others where everything appeared normal. Why the original photos were removed is unknown. Official agencies do not comment, only saying they corrected a technical error. But according to indirect reports, the dark zone may have resulted from sensor oversaturation caused by an overly intense, uncharacteristic, reflected signal. The information environment worsened further when certain datasets related to spectral analysis of 3I Atlas never appeared in open access. Formally, these are draft results not yet ready for publication. Informally, several researchers reported in private conversations that the spectrum showed overly sharp lines that are difficult to explain by natural processes. What exactly they meant remains unknown, since records of these conversations never made it into official reports. Another questionable aspect is the reaction of certain scientific institutions. Access to some data was restricted very quickly, sometimes within an hour of its appearance. Whether this was a routine attempt to avoid misinterpretation or an effort to conceal something society is not ready for is hard to say. Skeptics claim that all these oddities can be explained without any extraterrestrial technology. Noise, technical glitches, incorrect assumptions. But supporters of alternative versions argue, if strange coincidences become too numerous, perhaps they are no longer coincidences. Could 3I Atlas be an artificial object? There is no direct evidence, but there is no definitive refutation either. And each new fact makes the question not less, but more pressing. When astronomers first began constructing the precise trajectory of 3I Atlas's motion, everything looked fairly ordinary. An interstellar object, a hyperbolic orbit, high velocity. But the more data arrived, the more the trajectory began to look strange. Not contradictory, not implausible, just strange. As if there were something too perfect about it. Fact: the object moved with extraordinary stability. Most natural interstellar bodies show noticeable deviations, even from minimal influence of solar wind or gravitational fields. 3. Atlas did show some, but far smaller than expected. Interpretation: this could indicate a high-density nucleus or a specific mass distribution. But some believe such stability resembles trajectory correction, weak, subtle, but sufficient to maintain nearly ideal alignment. During the approach to the Sun, it became clear that Atlas was passing through the system's gravitational field as if avoiding chaotic perturbations. This is a real fact. Several independent teams confirmed that the passage angle was extremely precise. Online speculation claims this movement resembles not the natural ejection of debris from a foreign star system, but a deliberately calculated trajectory designed to minimize loss of velocity, as if the object wanted not merely to fly past the Sun, but to preserve a route. Another mystery arose from the trajectory's reaction to solar heating. Logically, when a comet begins releasing gas, its motion becomes less predictable. But Atlas instead maintained an unusually steady path. Fact: dust release models did not explain such precision. Interpretation: perhaps the emissions were weak or evenly distributed. But some researchers believe they may have been controlled, as though the comet's internal processes were linked to stabilizing its flight. According to some indirect data, at several moments calculations showed brief microsteering events, microscopic changes in velocity that did not fit the dynamics of natural gas emissions. Official comments neither confirm nor deny this, simply labeling it an anomaly in calibration. Yet some observatory staff anonymously said that something really was off with the graphs at those moments. The radar observation incident looks even more tangled. One radar captured a small but clear deviation in 3I Atlas's path. The data disappeared. The reason given: a server error. But why that specific fragment vanished, as if cut out of the dataset, no one has explained. No official source comments on it. Meanwhile, an unusual electromagnetic field was recorded over the region where the observations were made. Small, but enough to cast a fog over the incident. And one more detail that makes many pause: the comet crossed the solar system as if its path did not simply pass nearby, but through a particular conditional coordinate. Several astronomers believe that the Atlas route may be part of a much larger, invisible interstellar corridor, a track used by natural or artificial objects. There is no direct evidence, but the geometry of the flight looks suspiciously symmetrical. In the end, the main question remains: is this a coincidence or a hint at something bigger? Could such precision be purely natural chance, or does it bear the imprint of some kind of designer, be it nature or something far more intelligent? There are many versions, and none has yet been disproved. Whether this is coincidence, that is for you to decide. Another strange feature of 3I Atlas is its physical structure and the behavior of the material surrounding it. At first glance, it is an ordinary comet, an ice-covered nucleus, gas and dust emissions forming a coma and a tail. But with more detailed analysis, anomalies appear that do not fit classical models. Fact: the comet exhibited uneven dust emissions that changed instantly and without any visible cause. Interpretation of this phenomenon in scientific papers is simple. Internal cavities or karsts could cause sudden releases of gases. But some researchers believe that the character of these emissions indicates a more organized internal structure than is usually assumed. There is speculation online that the shape of the nucleus may have influenced the direction of the jets, as if they were controlled from within. An additional suspicion came from spectral data showing variations in the concentration of organic molecules in the emissions. Fact: at certain moments, the gas composition differed from the comet's average chemical profile. Interpretation: perhaps parts of the nucleus heated unevenly, exposing new layers of ice. But some argue that such an irregular distribution of molecules is difficult to explain solely by natural processes, especially when the emissions were directed in ways that do not match classical dynamics. Another point: changes in the comet's shape over time. According to telescope data, 3I Atlas at times appeared slightly elongated and then round again. This could be the result of nucleus rotation or lighting effects. However, some astronomers noted that the speed of these changes exceeded what the physics of rotation of a natural body of such size would allow. One idea is that this may be related to internal processes that maintain a certain shape or even to empty zones that alter the mass distribution. According to some indirect data, small clusters of material appeared in the comet's tail that moved at speeds atypical for natural flows of gas and dust. This led several observers to suggest that the particles might be electrostatically charged or even influenced by invisible field lines. Online discussions mention the idea that these particles show coordinated behavior, as if they are part of a more complex system than a simple comet. Another detail: in some images of the comet, dark, almost geometric areas were observed within the coma. Officially, these are explained as shadows from gas jets or camera artifacts. But several observatory staff anonymously confirmed that they saw these structures even before data processing, and they appeared too distinct to be accidental. Finally, one more curious fact: during periods of nucleus activity, data from some telescopes disappeared or became incomplete. Why, unknown. Access to part of the information was blocked literally an hour after it was obtained. No official source has commented on this. At the same time, a faint electromagnetic field was recorded over the observation region. Whether this is related to the observations is unclear. So, 3I Atlas leaves more questions than answers. Whether these anomalies are natural or hint at something artificial, that is for you to decide. There are many theories, and none of them have yet been disproven. Everything may turn out to be simpler or far more complicated. One of the key aspects of studying 3I Atlas was its chemical composition. Examination of the comet's spectra showed that the composition of its gases and dust differs from what is usually observed in comets of the solar system. Fact: the ratio of carbon and nitrogen isotopes turned out to be non-standard. Interpretation of classical models suggests that the object may have formed in another stellar system where formation conditions were different. But some researchers note that the isotope ratios are so unusual that they resemble something processed or structured outside natural processes. There is speculation online that such differences may indicate an artificial origin of the object or the influence of processes we do not yet understand. Another fact: the gas emissions were not only uneven, but at times enriched with rare organic molecules. Interpretation: these molecules could have been stored in deep layers of ice and released during strong solar heating. However, some researchers emphasize that part of the molecules exhibited atypical spectral signatures. Their concentration shifted in a way difficult to explain by natural heating alone. There is an idea that these signals may point to internal processes or structured reservoirs of substances that control nucleus activity. According to some indirect data, temporary bubbles of gas with unusual chemical composition appeared in the comet's tail. Fact: these regions moved faster or slower than the rest of the tail material. Interpretation: perhaps this is the result of localized explosions of icy cavities. But some astronomers suggest that this could be a sign of a complex internal structure or even some sort of controlled activity. Whether this is a natural anomaly or evidence of something artificial, there is no definitive answer. Another interesting point. Some spectra of the comet showed signals that looked like chemical components rarely found even in interstellar clouds. In scientific publications, these were labeled as unexpected chemical features, but not explained further. Several observatory staff anonymously confirmed that in the raw images, these signals were brighter and clearer than what was presented publicly. Why part of the data was concealed, unknown. Another mystery involves fluctuations in the concentration of water and carbon dioxide in the emissions. Fact: the levels of these substances change not only depending on the comet's proximity to the Sun, but also over short periods of time. Interpretation: internal cavities may have opened suddenly. But some researchers note that the speed and regularity of these fluctuations resemble controlled processes more than chaotic natural ones. There is speculation online that this could indicate an engineered structure inside the nucleus. Another detail: some spectra disappeared or became incomplete without any visible reason. Why unknown. Access to part of the information was blocked within an hour. No official source comments on this. But the fact remains: the chemistry of 3I Atlas shows features that differ significantly from any comets of the solar system. Whether this is simply interstellar variation or a hint of artificial origin, that is for you to decide. There are many theories, and none have yet been disproven. Everything may turn out to be simpler, or far more complicated. Another aspect that makes astronomers and researchers question the nature of 3I Atlas is its tail and material emissions. Ordinary comets form a tail pointing away from the Sun due to solar-like pressure and solar wind, and its behavior is usually predictable. In the case of Atlas, everything looked different. Fact: the comet's tail often changed shape and density over short periods of time. Interpretation in scientific reports: uneven nucleus activity or sudden gas emissions. But some researchers emphasize that the speed and direction of these emissions sometimes contradicted classical dynamics. There is speculation online that the tail may have been partially controlled. The changes occurred as if the material were being distributed according to a certain plan or pattern. An additional mystery was the presence of distinct streams of dust moving faster than the main tail flow. Fact: these clusters of material deviated from the general direction. Interpretation: possibly a result of electrostatic or magnetic effects acting on the particles. But some astronomers suggest that the speed and trajectories of these streams are too regular to be random. There is an idea that this may indicate internal structure within the nucleus, or even a system of microjets directing the movement of particles. Another fact: gas emissions occurred not only under the influence of the Sun. At certain times, when the comet was far from the central star, spikes of activity were recorded. Interpretation: these could have been internal cavities suddenly opening. But there is speculation online that these spikes occurred according to a scenario, as if an internal system were controlling the nucleus's activity. In addition, dark regions or bands occasionally appeared in the tail that did not match the natural spread of dust and gas. Fact: they were clearly visible in high-resolution photos. Interpretation: these might be shadows cast by dense gas streams. However, some observers note that the structure of these bands is too geometric for a natural process. There is an idea that such formations could originate either from internal features of the nucleus or from external, invisible force fields. Another detail: some spectra and photometric data disappeared during the moments of highest tail activity. Why unknown. Access to part of the information was blocked within an hour. No official source comments on this. At the same time, satellite images recorded weak electromagnetic anomalies in the region where observations were conducted. Whether this is a coincidence That is, for you to decide. Finally, it appears strange that the Atlas tail sometimes turned in directions that do not correspond to the force lines of the solar wind. Interpretation. Perhaps these were local gas vortices or interactions with the interstellar medium. But some researchers hint that such behavior may indicate some kind of internal coordination of emissions. There are many theories, and none have yet been disproven. Everything may turn out to be simpler or far more complicated. One of the most mysterious characteristics of 3I Atlas were the anomalies that cannot be seen at first glance, but were detected by highly sensitive instruments and spectrometers. Telescopes recorded non-standard signals in different ranges, which drew the interest of astronomers and even some skepticism in certain laboratories. Fact: in certain spectra of the comet, weak but distinct hot lines were observed, which are not typical for classical comets. Interpretation. These may be rare chemical compounds or temporary molecular formations in icy cavities. But there is an opinion that such signals look as if the nucleus's internal processes are aimed at maintaining a certain level of activity. There is speculation online that such signals may be signs of an artificial or structured nature of the object. Another detail. In several cases, instruments recorded short electromagnetic bursts near the nucleus. Fact: the bursts were so brief that they could not be the result of ordinary gas emissions. Interpretation. This phenomenon may have arisen due to frictional or chemical processes. But some researchers note that the regularity of these bursts looks more like controlled activity than chaotic natural processes. According to certain indirect data, some radio observations from observatories disappeared or were incorrectly recorded exactly at the moments of such bursts. Why, unknown. Access to part of the information was blocked literally within an hour. No official source comments on this. Officially, it was described as technical failures, but anonymous sources noted that the signals were very clear and had no natural explanation. Another fact: temporary clusters of dust and gas were detected in the comet's tail, moving at unusual angles and at speeds different from the rest of the tail. Interpretation. This may be an electrostatic or magnetic effect. But some researchers assume that the behavior of these clusters might have been controlled or influenced by the internal structure of the nucleus. Additionally, some spectral lines appeared and disappeared within short periods of time, as if the object were turning on and off certain components of its composition. Fact: this was confirmed by independent observatories. Interpretation. Processes inside the nucleus may be unstable, but the Internet speculation suggests that such behavior resembles a kind of signaling system. Another point. Some infrared observations showed localized heat bursts when the comet was far from the sun. This is strange, as the distance should have reduced the temperature to minimal levels. Interpretation. These may be chemical reactions inside the nucleus. But some astronomers allowed that the internal structure could have created a thermal accumulator effect, maintaining a certain level of activity. Whether these anomalies are natural or indicate something more complex and possibly artificial remains an open question. There are many theories, and none have yet been disproven. Everything may turn out to be simpler or far more mysterious. Another aspect that makes one reflect on the nature of 3I Atlas is its interaction with the bodies and fields of the solar system. At first glance, the comet moves along a familiar hyperbolic orbit, but detailed measurements show small anomalies that cannot always be explained by standard gravitational physics. Fact: during its approach to the Sun, the comet's trajectory displayed small but noticeable deviations from predicted coordinates. Interpretation in scientific publications. These deviations could have resulted from uneven gas and dust emissions from the nucleus. However, Some researchers note that the precision of the deviations and their regularity are difficult to explain solely by random natural activity. There is an opinion that these microcorrections may be a sign of internal stabilization or the influence of external forces that we have not yet detected. Another strange detail: along Atlas's path, anomalous interactions with the solar wind and the sun's magnetic field were detected. Fact: particles of the tail behaved as though they were reacting not only to wind pressure, but also to invisible guiding lines. Interpretation: perhaps tiny charged particles interact with magnetic fields. But there is speculation online that this may be evidence of coordinated behavior, or even technological intervention regulating the directions of emissions. According to certain indirect data, at the moments of closest approach to planets, the comet's trajectory remained exceptionally precise. Fact: the deviation from calculated orbits was smaller than expected even under standard models. Interpretation: this can be explained by the correct balance of gas and dust emissions. But some astronomers allow that such a precise flyby looks almost like a deliberate maneuver. Whether this could have happened naturally is unknown. Another interesting detail: satellite images occasionally showed dark zones near the nucleus, which were quickly replaced with new photos. Officially, this was explained as technical errors, but there is an opinion that it may have been a corrective signal hidden from the public. Several observatory employees anonymously confirmed that they saw this data before processing, and it looked too regular to be accidental. Another fact: at moments of interaction with the magnetosphere of Earth or Jupiter, short-lived anomalies were observed in the tail spectra. Interpretation: these may have been tiny charged particles interacting with planetary fields. But some researchers assume that this interaction could have been controlled, as if the object were responding to its environment intentionally. Finally, there are mysterious cases of missing or incomplete data at moments of maximum interaction with planets. Why this happens is unknown. Access to these datasets was blocked literally within an hour. No official source comments on this. Whether these anomalies are natural or indicate a more complex, possibly artificial nature of the object remains an open question. There are many theories, and none have yet been disproven. Everything may turn out to be simpler or far more mysterious. After all the observations, analyses of chemistry, trajectory, and the tails of Comet 3I Atlas, one main question remains: is it a natural object, or could it have an artificial origin? Let us consider the facts and indirect data that make researchers think. Fact: Atlas's trajectory, its speed, and the stability of its movement do not fully fit standard models of interstellar bodies. Interpretation of traditional science: this is simply a rare natural phenomenon. But some researchers believe that such precision and purity of movement are difficult to explain by natural causes alone. There is an opinion that this may be a sign of adjustment or the influence of some invisible force factors. There is speculation online that the object might have been observational or transportation related, although there is no direct evidence of this. Another fact: the chemical composition and isotope ratios do not match typical comets of the solar system. Interpretation: the comet formed in another stellar system. But according to certain indirect data, the isotope ratios appear too regulated, as though the nucleus had undergone some process of stabilization or structuring. Several astronomers noted that such a profile can be explained only by rare natural conditions, but an alternative version suggests a more complex origin. Fact: anomalies of the tail, radio and electromagnetic signals, non-standard fluctuations of emissions. All of these are real observations. Interpretation of traditional science: these are just rare effects that occur in complex nuclei. But some researchers point out that the coincidences are becoming too many, and some patterns look like signals or controlled processes. According to certain indirect data, dark areas appeared in satellite images that were quickly replaced with new frames. Why exactly is unknown. Another detail: access to part of the data was blocked literally within an hour after receiving it. No official source comments on this. This creates an effect of fog around the object, where real facts are mixed with the unknown. Several anonymous sources confirmed that they observed signals and structures that were not published officially. There is an opinion that all these anomalies can be explained by natural causes: random coincidences, non-standard chemical processes, magnetic effects, and electrostatics. But some researchers believe that artificial origin should not be dismissed either. There is speculation online that Atlas might have been a probe or experimental device of an alien civilization, although there is no direct evidence. Finally, the main question remains open. Is this interstellar comet natural, or does its behavior conceal something much more complex? Is it simply a strange coincidence, or a hint at something more intelligent? There are many versions, and none have yet been disproven. Everything may turn out to be simpler, or, on the contrary, far more mysterious. Is 3I Atlas a guest from distant space, or a messenger from another world? The answer remains open, and every new fact only fuels curiosity and discussion.